I'm Kirk.
And I'm Jason.
And we're with Artspeed Creative. In this video, we're going to cover the differences between mission, vision, and core value statements, why you need these statements for your church or organization, and how to craft them so that your team can go farther, faster, together. I think one of the challenges of leadership is always to try and get a whole team of people pointed in one direction. When you're leading a church, you're going to have different people. I know when we started a church and we tried to form these mission, vision, value statements and yet found that people had different understanding of what those meant for their church. They had different ideas of what those values meant, which meant that our statements weren't as clear as they needed to be. And so those different values were pulling in different directions. We had leaders on our team that were using their energy and gathering their people to go off in this direction, and others that were going this direction. And that's a lot of spent energy that, especially as a church plant, we couldn't afford to waste.
One of the things that I realized when we were first writing core values was about as fast as you can write them, they can be forgotten. And I think, you do all this hard work sometimes. You've got the dry erase board out there and you're just, you come up with some really great statements. That doesn't make them core values. Even if you've titled the document core values, it doesn't make them core values in the hearts and the lives of those you're leading. Just like what you just said about some would then take those and apply them this way and others would take and apply them the other way. There was still a lot left to interpretation.
In fact, there's a lot of organizations, a lot of churches that have core value statements. They're up on the wall. But that doesn't mean that they are functioning as core values in the decision-making of the organization, in the systems of the organization. If your systems are pointed in a different direction, if your systems do not support your core values, they are not, in fact, functional core values.
Right. Words on a wall does not mean they're core values. And I think the other part of that, I think maybe that's also led to some people not wanting core values. Like, why even have them? We don't even write them down. But in those environments, what I found is usually there are core values. Every organization has core values, meaning the values that the culture of those who serve in, like they rally around. They become the pillars in which it governs how people interact with one another. It talks about whether people show up on time or leave early or get their jobs done or enjoy serving together or create bitterness and frustration and all the other junk that can happen in any organization. Those values are at play. The problem with those that don't write them down is you then don't have a lot of leverage or authority to make big leadership changes. You can write them down and put them on a wall, and that doesn't mean you've got to make some leadership choices in your systems and structure in order to see them play out. But also a leader that doesn't write them down, doesn't have them in place, also it's going to be really hard to hand them off to somebody else. Now you're talking about multiplication and scalability. How do you do that? Or even legacy. How do I hand off something I've created to the next generation without mission, vision, and values being very intentionally crafted? It's going to be very hard to hand it off.
I think that intentionality is part of the point. You have core values already. There's functional core values in your culture. There are underlying principles for how decisions are being made. But is that the way that you wanted to operate? Or is that just a consequence of how things have gone so far?
That's good. I want to clarify at the beginning of this that often these terms, especially mission and vision, are synonyms within our culture. Meaning you can go to the bookstore and pick up a leadership book, and they will have different definitions in that book. And then you pick up the next leadership book and they'll switch. And that's okay. So however you want to define it, I don't think there is in our culture, a specific definition for mission or vision. But for me, it comes down to the why, the what, and the how, right? For me, the mission is the why. This is why we exist. And if you're leading a church organization, like I feel like Jesus gave us a pretty good one, right? The Great Commission. The Great Commission outlines, making disciples. I mean, and a lot of organizations that we've served look back at that commission and then they craft their mission statement. Great. You're now lining up with one that's worked for 2,000 years. That's a big why. But then what do we do? And I like defining vision with the actual things that we're going to do, what I can see that we're going to do that's going to help us fulfill that big why. But then the core values might be as important as any of them, or even more, in that this is how it's going to feel while we do what we do.
And it's important for that mission, especially for the church, who has a mission in general. And there's different ways you could phrase this, of course, but a mission to reach people and make disciples. In other words, to invite them in to this culture. And so how we define that culture and how we create that culture is not extraneous to that mission. It's essential.
Yeah, and when you write them down, it gives some tools. I think you start creating some language that will empower your leadership. I know myself as a leader early on, I'm like, okay, well, what should we talk about at our staff meeting? What should be the focus for the next sermon series? And you're really left with what's trending, what's the most popular new book, or what caught my eye, or what just happened across my path that week. But when I write down my mission, my vision, my values, I now have language, I have purpose, and I can now systematically make sure that I'm hitting over and over again, not just in for rote memorization. Everybody repeat after me. And I've heard that. Everyone here knows our core values. They can repeat them because they were all forced to memorize them. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about it's in the heart, it's in the fabric of the culture because we talk about them from every angle.
So if you don't have them yet, how do you start to put together mission, vision, and values? Where does it come from? What process do you go through?
Well, I think, there's probably lots of different processes. You can get a dry erase board. Dry erase boards are my happy place. So I would highly recommend getting a dry erase board, sitting down with your team. We've had clients that have gone on retreats to wrestle with some of the deeper questions that do come out when you're trying to articulate who you are and who you want to reach and the value that you want to bring to them. There's going to be some deep questions these are things that you shouldn't change often. I'm not saying you can't have seasonal topics that you teach on. I absolutely, teach on all the felt needs, teach on all the timeless truths. But for this is core values. This is the kind of culture we want to create. This is the big why we exist. Wrestle those words to the ground. Obviously, our team has a process where we've come alongside now several different organizations to help them ask the right questions, frame the conversations. And I think we could probably break down each piece of it: mission statement, vision statements, and core values.
Is there some way of judging this is a good vision statement versus this is a not? This statement isn't helping us, or?
That's a great question. Part of me wants to say yes for the sake of this video. The other part says, maybe not. What it has to work for you. I think is it working? Is it working for you? Is it actually creating the thing that it's pointed at?
I think the first criteria would be, is that something that your whole organization is inspired to be a part of? And if it's not, it would mean one of two things. It would mean, okay, the people that it's not inspiring for, they're actually not going to feel like they fit here. But if it's something but if you'd say no, they should be here, then maybe your mission statement isn't clear enough. Maybe it's not big enough. Maybe it's not pointed in the direction that everybody knows that they want to go.
That's good. So I think yes to that, but I think also we're talking about the systems and the structure and how well are we communicating it. So first you want to make sure you have a statement that is in the language of the people that they can understand, they can see themselves in. They can say, yeah, that's something I would want to give to, serve to, whether they were paid or volunteers. Like, that's a big statement. That's your mission. Yeah, that's my why. I resonate with that why. That's why I want to be. But then we get into the vision statement. Do these things so that you can have that thing. A lot of that, yeah, get really great language, again, that's in the common vernacular so people understand what you're saying and it resonates with them. It's their language. They could share it as though it were their own. But then how are you structuring so that those things actually come true? And I think even more, that applies even more to the values. I know one of my favorite illustrations of values in the common language was when we were a portable church ministry, planting a church in a portable environment. And we finally went from set up and tear down everything in a movie theater to renting some school space that allowed us some on-site storage, right? That was a big day, right? After, I think, 2 years. So 100 plus Sundays in, now we don't have to build everything. There's already a stage. And I remember when we were doing that, the drums were the last ones set up and they were the last ones torn down. So the drummer's over there like with a wing nut and everybody else is like headed, to lunch. And then sound check kept getting pushed into like service times, and they're wanting to push service back because they hadn't done, lock the doors. And I'm the church planter, and visitors are coming in. I'm like, no, they're coming in. But, and it was all because the drums were taking forever. And one of our tech guys said, hey, I have an idea. We have these stage risers from when we were portable in the movie theater. What if I put wheels on them and we could just wheel the whole drum set all set up into the storage closet? And it worked phenomenally. Now all of a sudden the drummer's like rolling out chords for everybody because like they were the first one set up and the first one packed up. And then that became a core value when we were struggling as an organization to figure out how to make something more efficient, was how can we put wheels on this? But it was a story that was a part of the language of the people, which I think a lot of this, we're talking about how to build culture. Mission, vision, values, these are the pillars. These are the foundation, the pillar, and it is words. Words create worlds. And the world that you're trying to create, if you want to be intentional about it, you need to be intentional about the words that you use.
That's good. That's good. So once you've defined your core values, what's the next step after that? Is that enough?
Absolutely not. Like, again, you can put words on a t-shirt and you can put words on a wall and then they're just, and you can even force people to memorize them, but that it doesn't make them values. Like the thing you can call them core values. What makes it, the things that we're finding effective is by getting very systematic in how often we talk about it. Right. And I think the idiom is, until you're tired of it, they don't even start knowing it or something. But I think more than just being exhausted saying the same phrase over and again, that would be boring to me. What I find joy in is finding as many different ways as we can of weaving them in, teaching on them, reminding about them, getting others on our team to teach about the application of them and how it affects, creating themes for that month around that core value, but also evaluating what we do by them. Meaning, like, if we're not producing, one of our core values at ArtSpeak is gratitude is our operating system. And so if we could force that, that would be an option, right? Everyone be grateful. It is hard to mandate gratitude, really, when you think about it. Like, be grateful. I'm not grateful because you asked me to be grateful, right? So what are we doing to enhance gratitude? Well, one of the things that we do is we start every meeting with a win. Or even just with a gratitude. What are you grateful for? And it could be anything from your puppy to a date night to a vacation you took. Often it becomes about those that you're working with, which is phenomenal. And I've had friends push back on it and laugh it off. But I'm telling you, if you will weave gratitude into you don't have to use the same words we use, but if you can weave gratitude into your organization, again, not just saying it's a core value. Hey, gratitude's a core value starting today. That doesn't make it a core value. Look for ways to build it in. But I would then apply that to all the values that you want to see and build on. How are you then intentionally, systematically teaching on it, reminding on it, and then even structuring your meetings, your environments so that people actually experience that thing?
And that's the hard part. That's the hard work. I think as a leader, if you have these core values and they're stated core values, and the pressure is on you as a leader even more, like you must be consistent in your living out of these values. Or when you fail to live up to the values, to call it out, to admit it, and come back to it. And that's the part of it that builds trust in your culture that, no, this really is it. We meant it. And now everybody can start to operate on that basis.
Well, it has to be, and it often is, but it has to be your go-to, right? When you're faced with conflict, when we're faced often, sometimes, with a difficult situation, are we going to operate by those values? And I'd say if you're a leader and you're in a spot where you're feeling tempted or over and over again, you feel like you're compromised, that's just not a core value. You need to go back and do the hard work again and write down the core value that you do want to operate by. But the way you answer that made me think about, again, back to the front of this and even to the end of this talk. A lot of times these values are embodied in a leader, in their heart and in their mind. They're the one who started it. So maybe they haven't articulated it, but it just is. Why is it? Well, it's because it's in that leader's heart, and they have so governed themselves. And some of the leaders out there are just phenomenal at being able to govern themselves in a way that brings about values, whether they can articulate them or not. Now, what we found when helping large organizations come up with core values was that leader, as gifted and talented as they were, had no handles to hand it off to the next generation. And they were doing some math and realizing they're not going to be on the planet forever and wanting to hand it off to the next generation. So it was such an honor to come alongside that regional, multi-site organization, church, to extrapolate what are the core values. And so, yeah, you could go and do it with the dry erase board. It's going to take a lot of listening, a lot of question asking. Remember, one of the questions that just got that leader talking was, what is it 10 years from now, 15 years from now, you walk back in, you haven't been here for 10 years, you walk back in, and it's exactly what you had dreamt, exactly what you'd hoped. What is it like? And he didn't talk about styles. In fact, he said, I don't care about style. I don't care about what it looks like. I want it to feel like this. I want people to experience this. And he started going off on the things that he was hoping people would experience. Bingo. Now we're taking notes on the words, the phrases, the things in the culture that he hopes would transcend him. And so this very gifted, very talented leader who had never written it down now has a set of core values that he can teach on and hopefully weave into the fabric of the hearts of those he leads so that long after he's gone, they'll be experiencing the same fruit that they are while he's there.
That's good. That's good. So once you define this, once you figure these out, what happens in an organization after all of this gets clarified?
They go get lunch off the No, I think after you get this clarified, I mean, I think it depends on the core values, but I think the good ones are going to create a really, really great culture that people have high, because those people that are a part of it, they understand why you exist. And they're like, yeah, I like that too. You're going to experience a lot more clarity in who you are and in who you're, called to reach. You're going to experience health. I think the people now, if you got good core values, and I know most people want some good core values, then the people are going to be healthy that are actually creating the things that you're creating and the experiences that you're creating. The people that are making it are enjoying making it. That creates a stickiness that you can't buy. It takes hard work and time. So you're going to create clarity, you're going to create health. And I think you're going to create momentum that surpasses anything that a campaign could create. Or this is the foundation of a really healthy campaign, is having really great culture. Having that clarity, having that health, and then building a momentum that, I don't know, others call it revival, others, awakening. I think, people will feel more alive. They'll feel more awake. They'll feel more connected to the purpose that you felt called to when you began to lead that organization.
That sounds good, Jason. I want that.
Same, me too. And I think that's the other thing. We think that also it's like there's no magic wand. It's not like bippity boppity core values, or there's not, bippity boppity healthy culture. It's going to take time. It's going to take an investment. Whether you're doing it as your team, obviously we have a team of people that love coming alongside organizations to help them with that deep work. And sometimes, you can't see the forest from the tree. So it's wonderful to have an outside voice. Michael Jordan had a coach, right? So you could be the best of the best. Sometimes it's good to have somebody else who's not in the game who can say, hey, try this, or what do you think's going on? And that's really, I think the best coaches are the best listeners. So our team, we've got a team of Jedi listeners, and we'd love to walk alongside that. I know we have some downloads in our resource page too, for those that want to walk through our branding questionnaire, get some of those deep questions. But also reach out, connect. We have free consultation with some of our strategists that could even help navigate what would be the best option for any organization listening.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Kirk.